we enter Good Friday. And when we enter Good Friday, let's ask ourselves again, as we did on Holy Thursday, where is Jesus? We find Jesus in the courtyard of the high priest, Caiaphas. Before or during the night, Jesus had been examined before the Sanhedrin, headed by the high priest Caiaphas. So he was questioned. False witnesses was brought. They testified against him. As the Jewish law demands, 2 witnesses are enough for one to be judged or for a judgment to be exacted. But you find out that these witnesses couldn't find something substantial for the Sanhedrin to condemn Jesus, especially for the kind of condemnation they wanted to give him, a death sentence. So they tried Jesus and find words of his own to use against him. And Caiaphas will let the people know that one man must die for the people. In fact, it is said that it was a prophecy. And now Jesus himself, after he answers their question, will tell them that he is the Son of God, and they will see him coming in glory. At these words, the scriptures tell us that Caiaphas tears his robes, and for him and the rest of the Sanhedrin, these words were reason enough to make Jesus be condemned to death. Now, from the Sanhedrin, Jesus is moved to the palace of Pilate, and then he is presented and brought, and they bring charges against him. Pilate will find no fault with him. He would hear that Jesus comes from Galilee, which is in the region of Herod, and he will send Jesus to Herod. So from Pilate, Jesus moved to Herod, and then Herod too will examine him and bring him back to Pilate. So this is the trial process of Jesus, from the Sanhedrin to Pilate to Herod and back to Pilate, where the final judgment would be given. Now, on Good Friday, we question ourselves, or we concentrate on the bitter suffering and death of Christ. So the church is in solemn silence, meditating upon Jesus as he goes to the way that has been decreed for him. Now we focus on the way that Jesus traveled, the journey of Jesus from the court of the high priest to the palace of Pilate, and then to Golgotha, where he dies and is buried. So there is the solemn celebration of the Via Crucis, or the way of the cross, where at various points Jesus' journey is meditated upon, reflected upon, and prayers and intercessions and admonitions are given. Now let us examine the mystery of the cross. Why crucify Jesus? As has been said, Jesus, for the Jews, especially their religious leaders like the Sanhedrin, the scribes and the Pharisees, was a threat because he was winning the people away from them, because he claimed to be God. Now that for them is not possible, but they thought that Jesus was only man and no man was God. And for them this was blasphemy, deserving of death. Now they bring him to Pilate and they try to convict Pilate to crucify Jesus because of the Roman power that were ruling in Jerusalem or in Palestine. The Jews themselves had no power to kill an individual. So the cross, in Roman era or in the time of the Romans, the cross was the highest death sentence they can give, and it included brutal suffering and death on the wood outside the city, where people are mocked and then crucified before the public. In Jewish tradition, the cross is an abomination, and when we read Deuteronomy 21 verse 23, it tells us that anyone who is hanged on a tree is accursed. So for the Jews, it was not a joke to be crucified. It means this individual was the most of all, or the worst of all sinners. He had done something very grievous, and he is given this bitter punishment. What would Jesus do with the cross? For us Christians and for the world, Jesus turned the curse of the cross into our salvation. Remember that he hung on the wood of the cross for 6 hours, and at the ninth hour, at 3 p.m., he dies. Now Jesus turns away that curse that lay on human beings into salvation. Now when we take the death of Jesus, we question ourselves, is it real? Is it possible? If Jesus is God, how come God dies? Now remember that Jesus was both God and man. He was fully a human being, yet he was fully God. Now, let me give a scenario. If you have a container, let's say a plastic container, and you have an object, say a mattress or something, and you want to put into this plastic container, the object is bigger than the plastic container, and you force yourself to put the object into the plastic container, what happens? The container will rupture or it will burst. You will destroy it. You can think of pouring water, one bucket of water into a balloon. It will burst. Now, it will tell you that the quantity of water you kept into the balloon is too much for it. That's why it got burst. That is exactly what happens on the cross. Now, somebody who was God and incapable of dying died, and in so doing, he destroyed death. You have to understand that God cannot die, and therefore Jesus' death on the cross was a distraction of death, because death couldn't swallow him. He died because he was fully man, yet since he was God, death couldn't swallow him. And there on the cross, he destroyed death, because death was the ultimate punishment of human beings for our sins, and it separated us from God. Now, this death of Jesus is not a myth, as the missal of the Catholic Church or the Roman Missal will tell us. The Gospel writers do not tell us the salvation history or the death of Jesus or the crucifixion of Jesus to play on our emotions. They are reality that took place. And when we go into Roman history, you'll find out that there was a time one man called Pontius Pilate ruled as governor in Galilee, and under him Jesus suffered and died. So this is a historical event, and the cross can never be erased out of history. If you doubt it, read history. And as it is said, when you learn history, you become more Catholic. Now, on Holy Friday or Good Friday, after the church has remembered the journey with Jesus, after we have journeyed with him from his condemnation to his death and burial, we now come back to venerate the cross at the hour he died. The veneration of the cross that takes place at exactly 3 p.m. Here we are presented with readings from the Holy Scriptures. We take intercessions for the whole world, and then we come to adore the cross on which Jesus died, and we kiss the feet of Jesus Christ on the crucifix, after which we receive Holy Communion and we depart in silence. Remember that Good Friday is the only day in the year that the church does not celebrate the Mass or the Holy Eucharist, and all other sacraments are not celebrated unless in very severe situations. So now, let's look at the burial of Jesus. We are told he was wrapped with clothes and with incense, and then laid in a new tomb that was hewn out of a rock that belonged to one man, Joseph of Arimathea, who went to Pilate for the body, supported by people like Nicodemus and the other women that followed Jesus. The burial of Jesus and his sleep in death will turn us into the third day of the Easter Triduum, Holy Saturday.